Hey, I'm Mark Stevens, author of Government Indicted, a website, of course, markstevens.net. We're live here from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Glad to be with you here today. It is February 8th, 2016. And yeah, we didn't have a live show this past Saturday, so hopefully, we get a lot of calls. Although, I will say, to start off, we'll check. I have had somebody who's very, very pissed off at me, who has been, yes, I'm going to say it, he has been spamming my YouTube channel. And he's not on yet. And he said it's basically making it, since he's seen my material, he is making it basically his life's mission to warn people about me and to put me out of business. And hey, welcome all dissent here on the show. If you want to call and just insult me, that's fine too. As long as you answer some questions and present some evidence, the insults are fine. As long as the insult is not really an ad hominem where it's just in response to a question. Otherwise, yeah, feel free to, if you want to call with evidence and an insult, those are always welcome too. So you're welcome to do that. You know what? Before I get to that, I got to mention something here. I know there's a lot of problems with my No State Project Skype chat. I do recommend that people go there to get information on how to defend themselves. I've spoken about this before. It's just a train wreck sometimes, and we had some people that had to be cleared out. So I can take the verbal abuse or the written abuse. That's fine. But there's something that's a misunderstanding, I think, a fundamental misunderstanding about when I talk about damage control. Damage control does not mean we don't fight tooth and nail to get these tickets and complaints and assessments thrown out. I highly recommend that you make life as miserable as possible for those agents. Let them think about there's an easier victim down the street. This is not a casual laying over and filing a motion, and then if they don't throw it out, then taking a deal. No, this is making it as excruciatingly difficult as possible for them. We're always maintaining our professionalism. We're never interrupting them. We're not being rude. We're not raising our voice. But we are going to be objecting incessantly to the garbage that's going to be spewing from these lawyers' mouths who are trying to separate us from our money and also steal our time. So, we talk about damage control, yes, but it's not about giving up. It is about fighting them as hard as we possibly can. And in an effort to limit the amount of damage that these predators want to do to us. So, and hey, a lot of people are activists, and they accept, Robbie, who was convicted last week, and we do discuss that on the show, that Robbie was convicted. He would do it again because Robbie took a principled stand. It's something that I know not everybody is doing that, making a principled stand. They just want the ticket to get thrown out or they want the assessment thrown out. But a lot of people come to the No State Project and they call in because they are activists. And Robbie is one of those who's taking a principled stand, knowing he could have gone to jail. So I would say there was still successful damage control because he only got a small fine and probation. I also have to say, for the continued support of the show, I really do appreciate it. We're a very low-budget show here. As you can tell, I have this orange look, and I think it kind of looks like orange. So, no, it's not a Sicilian thing. It's just I don't have the most olive-colored skin out there, but it's certainly not lily white like the A behind me. But it's certainly not orange the way it kind of looks like it's going out over the air over there. So let me check my call. We got Jay in Texas on the line. He's called in before. We'll get to you in just a moment there, Jay. So I wanted to, if this individual, and I'll read his stuff now, I want to give him the opportunity to have the majority of the show, if in fact he bothers to call. So he goes by the name ICBM Catcher. And I linked it in, and we'll have this linked. We'll have his channel linked into the show notes. Thanks to Calvin, appreciate that. And we will have this. This goes right to YouTube, so within a half hour or so after the broadcast today, it will be available for those who can't catch it live. So, and then you'll have the link to this guy's channel. Now, what he's been doing, why I'm saying it's spam, it's not that he's selling anything. Well, he kind of is. He copy and paste into every comment practically he does on my channel, which he can't do it anymore because once you see what he's doing, you can understand why I took the drastic measure of blocking him. He can still comment on the articles and the videos at markstevens.net. So before anyone says, "Oh, Mark Stevens, he's afraid of dissent," he disabled the comments. No, there are two places you can comment on the videos. They're at markstevens.net. Directly on the article where you don't have to register, and then there's the forum where yes, you do have to register on the forum. We got to keep the actual spam bots out. So what he says here, and again, this is a copy and paste. He's done this all over my channel until yesterday. BS alert. Stevens' entire way of thinking debunked. YouTube act exposed. Do not like, subscribe, or donate. See, I think I just figured out what the hell that bong was. I usually will take care of the entry chime. We do have a new caller there. Maybe that is IceBM Catcher. He was supposed to email me before or when he called so that I knew when his area code was. But let me just say this in case that's him. Do not subscribe or donate, and do not support in any way. The Constitution applies to any individual within the borders of the United States of America because we, the people, through the authority we grant our representative, says it does. And because we have the means of enforcement. Okay there, Mr. Gotti. I understand what you're saying over here. That's the way the family operates. The mafia boss says jump, and because they have the means to enforce you to jump, you're going to jump. Oh. So here we have an appeal to authority and basically a proof by assertion fallacy right off the bat. How does that debunk what I've been... And then he says, all laws are arbitrary. All laws are arbitrary and exist only to the extent they can be enforced. Conversely, no individual need obey any law if they choose not to and have the means to overcome attempts at enforcement. So I guess he would agree that it would be moral to shoot a police officer. I can get behind that because it is if they're violating the non-aggression principle, if they're aggressing against you. The British colonies in North America. It's a great example. A great example of this concept is the American Revolution. The British colonies in North America was subject to the crown until they developed sufficient military power to defeat King George's efforts to enforce English law. There is no evidence the Constitution applies to anyone because no such evidence exists. How is that debunking my entire way of thinking? I want to point out that he thinks that I'm doing this just for YouTube views, which the joke's on him. I don't get many views. And I started doing this, and I can document this back in 1996. I mean, the first book based on the work that I do came out in 2003. So that was a full 2 years before YouTube. So, and I didn't even use YouTube much to begin with. There is no evidence the Constitution applies to anyone because no such evidence exists. What's more important is that evidence need not exist. The state, demonstrably false, the state has developed a means of enforcement, and so far a significant of Americans have not developed the power to overthrow the U.S. government. But we all retain free will. We don't have to pay taxes, to hold driver's license, to operate a motor vehicle. We can smoke in public where it's prohibited. We can rob banks and kick dogs if we choose, but we do so at risk of prosecution. And if we are arrested for one of those transgressions, our only hope is to win an acquittal, or we will serve whatever sentence is imposed by the court. The, quote, your laws don't apply to me / you have no jurisdiction defense virtually never works. I have a whole website section that would disagree with it there. We just posted another one from Australia. We had kicked out down there in Ipswich, Queensland, mate. So, wrong. False. Virtually never wins, but every American is free to learn that for themselves. Do not support this YouTube channel or its producers. This entire approach is nothing more than a desperate attempt to gain notoriety on YouTube. I've been doing this on YouTube with this channel since 2011. And if I was trying to gain notoriety, I have failed badly. And so I must be, if that's the only reason why I'm doing it, wow, I've really failed. It would be easier just to put porn up there. I'd get a hell of a lot more views. This approach is nothing more than a desperate attempt to gain notoriety on YouTube. Do not like, subscribe, donate, or support, and BS alert. Now, this is quite a bit of lines here, and he's copied and pasted this into pretty much every recent video that I have. So I look forward to him completely debunking me, because based on this, he hasn't debunked anything. Laws are arbitrary and there's no evidence. I've been saying that for a while. I'm gonna take a shot here. So Jay, I'm gonna apologize. I'm gonna go out of order because, hey, this may be dissent. This may be ICBM catcher here on the line, and I got a bias. I will put dissent on first. So let's go to area code 219. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Shahid from St. Louis.
Oh, I'm sorry. I sound Shahid. You wouldn't be ICMB. Well, you wouldn't be the guy who's spamming my YouTube channel, would you?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad to have you on the show anyway. So, what can we do? Where were you calling from again?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. What can I do for you today, Shahid?
Well, I've got a situation where a year and a half ago, I was hauled in for no tags, no driver's license, no insurance, and resisting arrest, and something else. I can't remember what it was. I spent 4 days in. I went in front of the judge after 4 days, and I pled not guilty. So we set a trial date for, I guess, 6 months to a year later. I couldn't make it. I got an extension. I got another extension. And then I finally, on the third time, made myself go down there because they claimed that I had to show up this last time. So I got there, and for 1 out of 5 cases, I was found not guilty on, and I was fined $2,500. Okay, and I made an appeal, and they gave me a year to appeal, but I didn't make the appeal because I came down with a situation that I couldn't make it. So now, like I said, it's been a year and a half, and I'm wondering what recourse I have to tackle this problem I have.
Well, you may be able to file a motion to vacate the decision, and that may restart your appeal. If not, you're going to have no choice but to file a petition for a writ to get the judgment overturned for lack of evidence proving jurisdiction. I mean, did you have a trial?
Yes. We had the trial. That's where I was found guilty on 4 out of 5.
Oh, I'm glad the 4 out of 5. That's great. Giving you a year to appeal is not. Somebody misled you. You've got at best 30 days to file the notice of appeal after final decision was made. So the only way to extend that would be, let's say you file a motion to vacate, some kind of post-conviction relief, and then you would be able to appeal his decision denying that. So you can get it beyond the 10 days or the 30 days. So those are the only 2 options
Right.
I see available. File a motion to vacate the judgment based on lack of evidence proving jurisdiction. And I don't know what happened at the trial. I mean, did you have a situation like what happened with Robbie last week where you were cross-examining the police officer and the police officer was declared incompetent? I mean, did something like that happen?
No. I went in there with this one guy's script, Eddie Craig.
Okay, so you don't really have any appeal issues other than a lack of evidence proving jurisdiction.
Yes.
Well, it's a big issue. It resolves everything and should reverse the decision, but it would be, this is why, if you're going to go in, you have to get issues for appeal that are going to be where the judge has no discretion, like with jurisdiction, and or cross-examination. And that's why we spend so much time doing the role playing, so that you can effectively cross-examine these police officers. And like what happened with Robbie, like what happened with Rebecca, and so many others of us, do you have the police officer declared incompetent to give legal opinions or give legal determinations, such as you broke the law, and then have the judge keep it and keep his testimony anyway, to allow him to testify when he wasn't qualified by the judge's own determination. So here, yeah, the Eddie Craig stuff, yeah, I don't see any merit to that at all from what I know about it. There's a big difference when we go into court and we're making issues of law and interpretation, and as opposed to just issues of fact, mixed issues of law and fact. And Eddie Craig and the stuff that he puts out, yeah, I see no merit to that whatsoever. I would tell people not necessarily. I wouldn't waste my time with it at all, period, end of discussion. But if people want to investigate that, they should do that, and before they completely dismiss it. It's just not an effective way to go to try to get them on an issue of law, of legal interpretation, as opposed to a issue of fact. The burden of proof on appeal is a world of difference. It's a magnitude order worse with an issue of law, because that's an abuse of discretion. And it's extremely difficult to overcome that. So issues of fact are much better. Having the judge deny cross-examination, that is a much stronger issue than, because you just have to show it happens. You don't have to show prejudice. You don't have to show an abuse of discretion. So
Right.
it's a lot better. That's the best I can offer you on that one.
Yeah, I got you on that. Yeah, because with that script, they only allowed me, or the judge only allowed me 3 or 4 questions out of maybe 20 some odd questions, on the script.
Well, I'll go out on a limb here without seeing the questions, but knowing how Eddie Craig kind of does things, you may be able to argue denial of effective cross. And it probably, since you only have the 2 issues, it may be worth putting that in. Denial of effective cross-examination. The judge, but now you get into depending on the questions, you have basically a contest that you have to go through with the prosecutor. You'd have to be able to show that the questions were relevant to the cross-examination, which with Eddie Craig's stuff, I'm not too confident that they were. But
Right.
I know with my own questions, and I spent a lot of time on this, and in court also, I build in the relevance to the questions. That there's a rational basis to the questions, and so we don't ask any questions unless we can show that there's relevance. Because as I wrote back in 2002, before there was YouTube, that relevance is one of their biggest objections, and knowing that's why
true.
and so that's why knowing they're going to object to that, I damn well better have my relevance built into the questions. So that's why we ask the questions in the manner that we do. They're not magic questions. They're not true just because, or good or effective because I say so, but the rationale behind them does. So
And they require facts.
Yeah, so that's the best I can do. I'm sorry, I wish there was more I could offer you.
Okay, I got the one was motion to vacate, and what was the second thing you said?
If that's denied or you can't do that because the time has just been too long, then you'd have to file a petition for a writ in the higher court, let's say for a writ of prohibition, to get them to not be able to enforce that judgment because there was no evidence in jurisdiction.
So writ of prohibition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Mark.
All right. Hey, I appreciate the call. Let me know what happens.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. I will.
You're welcome. Shahid in St. Louis. The number to call in is 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. You can, if you're a dissenter, you can Skype me at FrankRizzo3. Don't just call, but IM me first and say, hey, douchebag, I'm going to tear you a new one on the air. I am gonna rip you up, and I'll bring you up on the air. Okay? Don't just call. So it doesn't look like this ICBM catcher doesn't look like he's going to step to the plate. But just know we have 3 hours more of Anarchy Radio right here from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona on Saturday. And that is from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time on the Liberty Radio Network. So, hey, if we miss ICBM catcher today, he knows that we also have the show on Saturday. And given that he said he was wanting to do everything he could to put me out of business, we want to make sure we have as many opportunities as possible for him to be able to do that. I don't see that happening. But we want to give him the opportunity to do that anyway. So here he's been on the show before. He's a regular to the Wednesday show. We got Jay in Texas. How you doing over there today?
Did you unmute my line?
You're the man. Yep, you're up, Jay.
Oh, okay. Actually, this is Corey from California. I don't know if you
answered
the wrong.
Oh, he always has that problem with his phone. Okay, I see what happened. It changed out when I unmuted. Okay, well, Corey from California, what do you got for us today? What's you got an update?
Not an update yet. I called in last week, just kind of at the tail end of the show, and we kind of got cut off, but for technical reasons and stuff. But so I just wanted to ask some other questions and stuff that I wanted to ask then. Just to kind of review, my ticket is no evidence of insurance, or not. I'm sorry, not insurance. No evidence of current registration, and so essentially, and it's to the Blythe court, so I'm having to go to Blythe to fight it. But
my condolences to you.
What's that?
I said my condolences. I was in California, so why we didn't have a live broadcast this Saturday, and I drove in and out of Blythe both times. I don't have to get off I-10 though. I can just go through as fast as I can. And,
right. What were you doing out in California?
Well, I have family in California, so we're out once a month, and this month it's going to be twice. Oh. So we try to go out and help family as much as we can. So that means I get to spend some time in San Bernardino, which it's a whole other show. Just
right.
We make fun of Detroit, but I got to tell you, anyone who's ever been to San Bernardino in the last few years knows that San Bernardino is starting to rival Detroit. So I like to go to Big Bear or go to Arrowhead, but that's not in the cards. So I'm stuck in San Bernardino, but could be worse. I could be stuck. I could be stuck in Blythe. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I have heard that San Bernardino is, bankrupt, and that's why crime's going up and all this kind of stuff. But yeah. Speaking of Blythe, actually, since you're mentioning that, that was another question I kind of had. Blythe, obviously, you passed it, right? It's like a very small town, middle of nowhere, et cetera. So I wonder, is that an advantage to me or a disadvantage to me when I'm going into court, raising these issues and dealing with a judge in that court? You know what I mean? It's like a small town mentality, whatever it is. Do you think that's an advantage to me or a disadvantage to me?
The only time I've seen where that's been a serious disadvantage, where everybody knows each other, is a much smaller place than Blythe. I mean, Blythe is small compared to San Bernardino or Los Angeles, but it's by no means one of these one-horse towns. I've driven, funny, because I've driven through there so many times. You might recognize the sign, and it's on the south side of the street, and it says, food grows where water flows.
Yes, I saw that.
Right? You see it? Yeah, I see it. And I've driven through so many. I'm so glad that once we get past main part of Blythe, and then you can see the bridge that's going over the river, because that means I'm getting the hell out of California, and I'm going to be in Arizona.
I know what you mean. I feel that now that I go back and forth to Arizona, to California. I feel it every time I come back into California and every time I leave. So.
Well, all right. Well,
Well,
without getting too much, ragging on Blythe much anymore, let's get back to what your questions were. So I don't think it's going to be any worse there than you would have. And we've had tickets thrown out in Blythe before. Hell, I beat the living hell out of an assistant AG back in '97 against who was representing the franchise tax board. So. That happened in the Blythe Superior Court, which we actually have on video. So one of these days I'm going to digitize that damn thing, and I'm going to get it up. All right. So I don't think it's going to make a difference. They're going to have it's not that small a town. So anyway, I don't think that's an issue. So what's your other question?
Okay. Yeah. So my deal basically is I was stopped, and the cop cited me for not having evidence of current registration because my truck, couldn't pass smog, so it was not current registration. So basically, essentially, my ticket is, a fix-it ticket, or it's like $25 if you show correction. But my situation particularly is, it's going to cost like $2,000 to $3,000, whole, valve job, all this kind of stuff, in order to make that, correction. So I didn't want to go down that road. I don't think it's worth dumping that much money into my old high mileage truck. So that being the case, basically, it's like $285, without the correction. But what I've also learned is if I'm convicted, then the DMV now learns that I was driving on expired tags, and that's where they kick in. I was talking to the DMV guy. That's where they kick in their penalties and stuff. And since it was like over a year, it basically could end up being $700-800 DMV fines. So basically, I'm looking at it could be up to $1,000 or so, worst case. So that's kind of my situation and why I'm fighting it, et cetera. But because at first I wondered, the cop might think, or the judge might think, well, this is kind of strange, it's a fix-it ticket, and here you are now challenging jurisdiction and all this other stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, he might.
So, yeah. So anyway, but speaking of back to the cop though, so like I mentioned before in my emails, all he did was cite me just for the infraction of driving without evidence of current registration. Now, like I mentioned before, I actually did have I put on a different tag to make it look like it was current. Now, the cop did not cite me for that, but he did say that, hey, don't you know that's a misdemeanor? I could take you to jail for that. So my first question is do you know, is that really a misdemeanor if you actually kind of, fraudulently put on, a current year sticker on your vehicle if it's not, current registration? Do you know if that's a misdemeanor?
I would say I would take the officer's word for it on that. I mean, I'm not going to look it up right now. You can always look it up, but I think that would probably qualify as a misdemeanor. They probably do have that.
Okay. So that's why I'm kind of handing this. I want to be a little extra cautious with this because, like I was kind of thinking, is I want to challenge and that kind of a thing, but I also don't want it to come about where if it actually goes to trial and if the cop shows up, it turns into something where, it's a judge and the cop gets ticked off and I'm fighting it and that kind of a thing, that the cop actually says, well, hey, he actually did this also, which I didn't cite him for, and then, try to add charges to it or try to do something along the misdemeanor line. Any idea if that, is a possibility or is that kind of unlikely?
It's possible. It's not, I don't know how likely it is. But...
Okay. Okay. Well, the other thing that might make it unlikely is, the cop who was stationed in Blythe, he's now been transferred. So he's now transferred to like Palm Springs area. So he's like 110 miles away or so. So that's why I'm thinking it may be less likely that maybe he would want to drive all a couple hours almost to go back to Blythe. I'm hoping that's the case, that he just kind of blows it off.
Yeah, that I think that's probably likely, unless it's on a Friday and maybe he's getting overtime and so he doesn't care. But I remember you putting out an email. That is fair because if I remember right, you wanted to do a change of venue. I'm like, well, no, don't bring it to where the cop is. Make it easy for the police officer, and we want to make things as difficult as possible for these people. So if he's Palm Springs to Blythe, that's at least 100 miles. And that is a boring drive, man. Yeah. I try to burn a CD or something and listen to Johnny Dollar, that old insurance investigator show. kind of make it a little better of a drive. But I can give you all the. I don't want to talk more about that. I can give you landmarks from here to there. We actually called on the south side of the road by Rice Road. There's a circle of dead palm trees, and so we call that the palm tree Stonehenge. Because they've fallen down and they're rotting. So if you're driving out that way and you're by Rice Road, look at the south side, and there's an old gas station just west of that. 10 maybe 8 to 10 miles west, and there's graffiti on there says "Have a nice trip" and whatnot. I've made that trip too many times. I could work for J.B. Hunt at this point.
Yeah, so that being the case, that's what I'm hoping ultimately. I hope the cop doesn't want to bother, and that would make it go away a lot quicker, hopefully. But so kind of speaking to that, originally I mailed him when I'm back in December when I mailed my motions and stuff to the court. I also mailed the cop a copy as well to his new place where he's stationed in Palm Desert. So and just as a side note, that was asking for the Brady and the discovery request, and obviously I didn't get anything mailed back to me from then. So that's just points out, obviously, he's not sending me anything, discovery or anything like that. And that was requested back at the end of December, But
wow.
So
Okay.
that being the case, I also know in the past that you suggested calling the cop and asking him what his evidence is, before we get to trial, before we get to court, et cetera. I'm wondering, in this particular situation, should I still do that? Or, part of me wants to kind of lay low and just hope he blows it off. I don't necessarily want to make it a personal vendetta kind of a thing where I upset him on the phone and then he goes out of his way to drive to Blythe because he wants to, stick it to me or something like that. So with that scenario, do you think I should also actually physically call him and ask him for the evidence and do that thing, or just kind of let it lie with him at least for now?
I think I'd leave him alone, other than to send him a copy of the motion to dismiss for prosecutorial misconduct, and also the motion in limine, so that and maybe just the motion in limine is enough at this particular point, that he should not be able to argue that you violated the law, since he has ignored the discovery request.
Okay. Wait, can you repeat that last part about the discovery request?
Yeah, he should not be able to argue that you violated the law because he has not responded to the discovery request and the Brady request to produce the evidence that he relies on to prove that the laws apply to you in the first place. We
Okay.
do that because no one is permitted. Well, there's a double standard, of course, but the rule is fairness dictates that no one may argue without evidence and a competent witness. And if you're making a point and you have no evidence to support it, it's just true because you say so, then due process and fairness dictate that you're not permitted to argue that at all because you don't have any evidence. You're speculating. You're not allowed to speculate. Prosecutors get away with it every day, I know, but we're just doing this on the motion in limine to make it more difficult for the police officer and kind of nudge him into, hey, don't bother showing up. This is going to be really, really tough. He's going to see the motion in limine just like the other documents, and he's probably already deciding he's not coming back to Blythe. There's no reason to come back to Blythe. Screw this. It's only it's just a traffic ticket.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping. So, okay. So, yeah, I won't call him and do that follow-up stuff. But, I did send him all the motions back in December. Now, you're using this other term, and I heard you talking about it last week, that's motions in limine or whatever. Which one is that? I mean, what is that?
The motion in limine is sent with the package, so everyone, you should have that. And I have the explanation, the instructions that go with it, of course. And
well, what I have is I had to. Now I got your original paperwork. This was like 3 years ago when I was first doing the Hemet ticket.
Okay, yeah. Just shoot me an email and I will send that to you. And so it's pretty self-explanatory, but just like I'm saying that under the rules of fairness, due process, the rules of court, you may not argue unless there is facts and a qualified witness to support the argument. So if he's going to claim, for example, that you you are subject to the law and you violated the law, he has to have personal firsthand knowledge of the matter. He has to have proof. And so we send out,
Right.
when he fails to respond, and it's obvious from the record that all he has is an allegation, not any actual proof, then a motion in limine is filed so to let the judge know, hey, I've asked for the evidence. The record's devoid of it. He's not responding. He should not be permitted to argue without evidence. And granting the motion in limine would be an order to the police officer limiting what he could argue at trial.
Okay. Now, I guess since I didn't have that from 3 years ago, all I had was the demurrer I had, which I sent the court and the cop, the demurrer, the request for judicial notice, and the discovery Brady request. So the motion in limine, when would I be filing that? Like, would
Now.
I do it when I show up to the demurrer? Would I mail it to the court beforehand?
You can mail it now. Mail it to the clerk of the court and to the police officer now. The time has already come and gone.
Right. And the time come and gone, you mean for me to, wait for discovery and he hasn't sent me anything since the end of December? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, he's had more than 30 days. Well over 30 days,
Oh,
rather.
yeah.
And so that's
Okay.
when I tell people it's appropriate for the motion in limine. All right, because it's people say, well, can I file to compel discovery? No, just file to dismiss and the motion in limine to limit his argument, and then file the motion to dismiss for prosecutorial misconduct. Let him come into court and say, I don't have to prove that. I don't have to prove it. The law is magical and no evidence is required. Yeah, when you have a gun, you don't need evidence. When you're a damn criminal.
Right.
What
right.
is the judge going to
Okay.
say? Is the judge going to turn around and say it would be morally justified to protect yourself against the judge with a gun, to keep him from doing what he's doing? Is he going to admit that? No, they're going to go one single step short and say, I don't need evidence. But let's be honest. Whenever you say you don't need evidence to support your claim, you are saying you're a vicious criminal. That's exactly what you're saying. I don't need evidence to prove this. You're either a douchebag or you're a criminal or both. But you're not honest, and you're certainly not being fair. Anyone who makes the claim, oh, I don't need evidence to support what I say, yeah, you're a douchebag and you're a crook. And no one, and yet this guy, ICBM catcher, is going onto my page and saying that my way of thinking has been debunked, that nobody should support me in any way. Please. So,
Right. Okay.
well,
I'll email you that because that would be great, and I'll mail that to the cop too. That'll just be a reminder from the first motions back in December, and then I can mail that to the court.
yeah.
And then,
Well, what you're saying is
so-
I am not, hey, buddy, you had the upper hand on the street because you have a gun, but your gun can't help you right now. You either have the evidence or you don't. And so it's a reminder that I am going to make this very difficult for you. You're not just going to walk into court and testify for 5 minutes and walk out and screw somebody else's life up. This is going to be tough.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And so maybe filing that extra motion limine, maybe that will also, again, like the first motions, just deter him from wanting to even show up and bother with trying to fight it.
Yeah, sure. That's that would be great. So, well, I've
Okay,
got
now-
other callers, so I want to make sure, and I'm running out of time. So, if you have any other questions, you can either email me or you can call into the Saturday broadcast.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your time, Mark. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Appreciate the call. That was Corey in California, and so we will move to Jay. Real quick before we get to Jay. The number is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, and Skype is Frank Rizzo 3. It's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. I want to just point out that the time has been open for this ICBM catcher who claims that I'm a scammer to call into a live broadcast because he wants to do everything he can to protect people from me. But here's a live broadcast. Because I guarantee if I didn't block him from my YouTube channel, he would have been posting while I'm talking. So for any critics out there that I won't field calls, confront you in real time, you're dead wrong. And hey, Call. In fact, you know what? If you're a critic, call directly to the show right now, and I will put you on. Till then, let's get to we've got Jay in Texas. Jay, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey,
Hey, what do you got for us today, Jay?
finally, boy, it's a circus over there, huh? Last time, when I was going to get in, you hit the button and it cut me off. Boom.
Okay,
Anyway,
I know you've had that problem because I started talking as if it was you and it was actually Corey. It was weird.
Yeah, what's weird is before I got to say anything, it went bloop and it cut me off. So it's definitely a connection between you and I. You know, it's just an oddball thing. Anyway, I finally got in touch with somebody at the tax assessor's office today.
Oh, good.
That has been just a joy. You know, sitting on hold for hours on end, and you know, everything is, here's where you can send your money. Here's how you can send it. Do you need to know more about how to send the money? Well, it's all about giving the money.
Sure, you're talking to a cash register.
Yeah, and I was like, are you really? Okay, because if I couldn't get through, my next step was I'm just going to start emailing, you know, and then at least I'll have that dialogue or, you know, lack thereof, you know, on an email. So anyway, and I did record it, and I'll be more than happy, because we're really not going to have time, but I'll be more than happy to send you those recordings, and maybe you can use them, you know, in your call of shame kind of thing.
Yeah, what you need to do is give me the cliff notes and let me give you the bullet points of what's going on, because I don't have the opportunity to listen to all the recordings that people send me. So I apologize for that, but
No. Well, what I did was, because I talked to two different people, and so I did it in segments because they'd put me on hold, and you know they're digging through some imaginary book, you know, trying to find the answers I'm looking for.
Sure. Well, give me the meat and potatoes of this. What happened?
I'll give you the meat and potatoes. The first girl, once she realized she was in over her head, she said, "Well, I can give you the number of the state comptroller and your state legislature." And I said, "Well, I don't know how they're going to help because I don't see them on this bill anywhere. You know, you're the ones who sent the bill, so I would think you could deal with it in-house." And she said, "Well, that's just the information that I was given from my superior."
Yeah, the State Department two-step. That's exactly what they're doing. This is why I suggest, Jay and everybody else, we know that that's what they're going to do. Contact the chairman or the tax committee at the state legislature. I did it up in Maine and was able to tell them I already spoke to them. I have his home number. I've spoken to him. He doesn't have it. Now, you want to give it? So what you want to do is, do you want to admit to me right now on the phone you can't prove your laws apply to me? Yes or no?
Oh, listen, she saw herself getting painted in that corner, and she wanted nothing to do with it. And you know, believe me, I was nervous making the call, but it gave me comfort knowing, you know, having that advanced knowledge, knowing what they were going to do. And I kept my demeanor. You know, I was polite. I never raised my voice. You know, I'm kind of loud spoken anyway, but I kept my tone proper. And it got to that point, and I said, "Well, okay, before." She said, "Is there anything else? Is there anything else?" Well, yeah, I still have an unanswered question on the table. Well, I've done all I can for you, right? And so, the tax assessor for this county is Ron White. Okay, Ron Wright. And so the last thing I said, "Well, can I talk to Ron? You know, like we're good buddies or something." And she said, "By all means, I'll send you over to his office." And I was really surprised. I thought I'd get a voicemail, but somebody responded. Okay. Another girl called, answered from his office and said, "How can I help you?" So I start walking her through, what I had gathered so far. That because my property is physically located in Tarrant County, Texas, that your codes and constitution apply to me. She said, "Yes." Great. can you provide me with any proof or evidence to support that? She said, well, it's tax code. So we went into that little diatribe, and I finally got to the point. I said, all right, well, so we're going to just keep going in this circle, this logical fallacy. I said, so I'm just going to write down no evidence provided. And she said, okay. So I get to Stephanie, and we start doing that dance, and she pulled up the code, and I said, yeah, I'm looking at the code right now, but I have still not made the connection. And it got really interesting, and I made a mistake. I did make one assertion, but fortunately she didn't pick up on it, and I was able to kind of move on. But one of the interesting things was that she said, well, what makes you think it doesn't apply to you?
Because you haven't provided any evidence that it does. Oh.
Well, here's what I said. I think you'll really get a kick. I'm going to send you. I'll send you the video. I'll send you the audio of the last girl that I talked to, because that's the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. She said, well, what makes you think it doesn't apply to you? And I was like, this is one of those spots. This is one of those tricks. And I said, well, I didn't send you a bill. You sent me a bill. And in order for me to feel comfortable in paying this bill, I need to know if it's valid and if it even applies to me. She said, well, what makes you think it doesn't apply to you? And I said, well, this isn't about, that's not about what I think. It's about what I want to know as fact.
Well, I got to jump in here, Jay, because we're running very low on time. When they say something like that, say, excuse me, the burden of proof is on you. You're the one who's making these accusations and claims against me. You bear the burden of proof. I don't think that you have any evidence. That's why I don't think any of this has any validity. Now, you could change my mind by just providing some evidence and showing me you have proof instead of just saying it's true. Actually prove that it is. That's the way we should be responding. The burden of proof is on you. Do you have the evidence or don't you? When they say something like that, all they're doing is trying to shift the burden of proof to you. They're trying to get you to stop focusing on their lack of evidence. Because, damn it, if they had the evidence, they would just provide it, but they don't. They could even go into some stupid line of reasoning and say, I don't have to prove that. So you're saying you can't prove it. You can't possibly prove that this is true. I have to take this on religious faith.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It got really interesting at the end because she gave me two options, and I explained to her that I said, listen, before we go any further, what I'd like to do, what my objective is to get if the validity of this cannot be proven, then I want this eradicated. I want it voided. I want it zeroed out. She said, well, that's not going to happen. I said, why not? And she said, well, everybody has to pay. And I said, well, that's your opinion.
Oh, man. I love to be on the call with you, because when they say something like that, you want to get some more admissions from them. Let me see if I understand you correctly. You can't prove your claim against me, but you're going to try to take the money anyway. How is that not stealing? And they love to go back, but we have the law. And they say, but you don't have any evidence. You can't prove you have the law. So until you have the law, Marc, isn't it just theft?
Marc, I think that's what really got the first girl unhinged, because I did make that statement to her. I said, so given the information you've given me, you intend to move forward with this without any evidence that it applies to me. And she said, look, I've told you everything I know, and I've answered all your questions. And I said, all right, I'm getting nowhere with her. So
well, you say, no, you haven't answered all my questions. I just asked you a question and you didn't answer. Are you going to knowingly proceed against me without evidence to support? Yes or no?
Right. Believe me, she would not. She would not. She ignored that like, the gorilla in the room. And, but here's what's interesting. At the very end of it, the second girl I talked to, the girl out of the tax assessor's office itself, out of the man's office. She said, well, the property assessor, expert, whatever, is left for the day. So if I could get your name and number, we'll have them call you and maybe they can refine this. And I realized that, I really wasn't getting anywhere. I know you've informed me so well. I told you before that I was apprehensive. I wanted to be well prepared. And I feel like I really was. And I know there's a certain point where you kind of just got to, look, it's not going to happen. They're not going to go, okay, you're right. Boom, here you go. We're done.
Well, you get your admissions and against them that they the fact that they can't produce the evidence, and then you get your evidence of bad faith that they're going to continue against you, knowing that there's no evidence. And once you get that, if they're not going to drop it, they're not going to drop it. But we're able to then use that against them later. So I've got somebody who's been, I've got to get on. So we've been on for a while, but I appreciate that. So I would like, if you could set up an appointment, if you get a call from the comptroller or whoever the one you were just talking about, try to see if you can set an appointment that I can then help you out on, so I can be on the call. I'd like to be able to assist on that.
Well, they did tell me somewhere around 2-ish tomorrow. So
okay.
If you think that's something that'll work, get in touch with me, email, let me know how you want to work this and everything. And on a final note, I did get to see who Ginger was. I've been watching some videos and stuff. Him flipping off the people as they kicked out of the building. That was hilarious. And I did finally get to hear one of your Skype, what is it? The call-in?
The role play?
Role play. There we go. I finally got to listen in on one of those, and I'd love to get involved. I just don't know how to do it.
You got to go to Skype.com, download the Skype, install it, and then contact me.
I've got all that. Okay.
Well, I can't. All right, that's not something I can walk you through on a show. It's something we're going to have to do off air. So,
if you can help me out on through an email or something, I'd be more. I'd love it. But go ahead and get your other call. You're kicking ass. Thanks a lot, bud. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. Jay, hey, maybe we'll have a call to shame for tomorrow. So that would be sweet. I was working also with somebody in Texas, Cherokee County, I think it was, and they pulled the same crap. And that's what I mentioned on the show a while back, that the city attorney told me that they weren't qualified to determine that the laws applied. The city attorney. They didn't make an excuse saying, you're asking a theoretical issue or question of law, and you're not supposed to use evidence for theoretical issues of law. No. She just said she wasn't qualified. She knew she was in way over her head. Somebody was asking her to prove a claim. Prove a claim. That requires evidence. She knew she couldn't do it, so she just claimed ignorance. I'm not the guy. I'm not the right guy. I'll kick the can. I'll kick this to somebody else. So what we're going to do, let me bring Chris on. Hopefully he picks up right away. I'll do what I can to keep that muted until we know that we have him. Yeah, that's the thing. I want everyone who thinks that it is strictly a theoretical issue of law, that evidence is not required to prove the Constitution and code apply. I want you to go watch the video where I question Scott Bales, the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court. At no time does the man say it's strictly a theoretical issue of law. Here, a Harvard law graduate, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, said there was evidence that it was an evidentiary issue. It's not just me. It's not something I just made up. You need evidence to support your claim. And even Scott Bales, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, agrees. It's not right because he agrees and he's a legal authority on it. It's right because the rationale is there. If you make a claim, you have to support it. A practical issue of law requires evidence. It's not a theoretical issue of law. But we've got Chris back on the show. Chris, welcome back. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, I'm calling from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. I should remember that, but well, when I get you on Skype like that, I don't have my reminder there. So, all right, well, we don't have that much time left. What do you have for us today?
Okay, I just have a question for you. is it morally wrong to subject children to the unnecessary risk of death and injury?
Yeah, I think it would be immoral to put children in or put anybody in danger. If you know the situation is dangerous and you're not taking certain precautions, like getting into an automobile, you take certain precautions. Obviously, I think an example would be if you have a child in a car without a seatbelt.
But I mean, is traveling by motor vehicle, is it necessary? Let's say if you have like a bus available to take instead of a car,
Uh,
it's not a it wouldn't be a necessity at that point, would it?
well, it might be. It might be. I mean, I know when I drove back from California a few weeks ago, I had to rent a car, and nobody was available to get me back and from the mall where I dropped the car off, and the bus, unfortunately, did not go as far east as I live, so I wound up walking the 6 miles. So.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, for the sake of discussion, if a bus is available and you have the option to take a car or a bus, would traveling by a car be a necessity at that point?
I don't know. Would it be a necessity? Again, it depends on the situation. In a broad sense, it may not.
Well, you have an option to take a bus or a car. You could take a bus, and the car is not a necessity at that point. I mean, or there's other modes of transportation besides the car.
Yeah, there's like a bicycle.
So,
Okay, so
so then, therefore, is it fundamentally morally wrong to transport children in a motor vehicle if there's safer options?
a bus that doesn't have seatbelts. Well, I guess.
Well, I mean, statistically, buses are safer according to statistics. All the statistics out there
Buses are
on
safer.
traveling.
Because I don't. Well, I think it's too complex an issue to kind of have a black and white yes or no to it. But let's just
Yeah,
say
it's like
for
it's kind of like
discussion.
question about is eating meat necessity, and if it's not, then it's wrong. It's kind of the same nature of the question. It's kind
Well,
of like
no,
it's kind
because
of a loaded question.
it's absolutely certain that eating meat is not necessary in a general sense. There are certain civilization, communities where they don't have a choice. They, like the Eskimos, for example, which of course cuts their lifespan considerably shorter. So I don't. I think with the meat and eating and killing animals is a lot more black and white than the issue of transportation.
Well, I mean, I think the nature of the question is fundamentally the same in the sense that it has to be analyzed. It has to be. You have to define the terms and figure out exactly what are we exactly talking about here. So
what do you have to analyze in that it's wrong to kill a living sentient being that can suffer, that wants to live? I don't see where you have to examine that. You're going to have to show me some kind of connection where that, because killing is wrong. Especially if it's unnecessary. I know that's where you brought in the unnecessary. I don't think you're making an accurate analogy between the two. It's very black and white that killing is wrong. It's not black and white that putting my child in my car with airbags and seatbelts is morally wrong when I have the option to put them on a safer vehicle, say like a bus. Killing is wrong. There is no discussion there. If you're not killing to save your life, it's wrong. And there's plenty of evidence to show, and there's plenty of examples to show that there is absolutely no nutrient found in animal flesh or their secretions that you cannot get from a plant source. And there's a ton of what I believe of evidence to show that the animal sources are horrifically bad in the long term for your health, as opposed to the data shows that not eating animals and just having a plant-based diet is far and away more healthier. You'll have a healthy BMI. You'll have the lowest risk for all-cause mortality. And again, killing animals is wrong unless it's like a lion.
But you told the guy on your show that it was okay. He presented a hypothetical where he had a chicken and that's all he had to eat. And you said, well, if that's all you have to eat, that's okay.
Yes, a lot of people
So-
would consider that ethical. That
So in
to
certain
say-
circumstances, it's okay. You said it was ethical at that point.
to preserve your life, because yes, we do put more of an ethical value or a moral value on our lives.
So
than we
you're
do.
saying your own life is the ultimate, your own self-preservation.
What the? Hello. That was nothing I did. I just looked. It's 5 o'clock, but I did not cut Chris off. I promise everybody. Damn it. Well, I'm gonna. I have to drop off of this. I'm gonna keep Chris on in case he can jump back in, but we are out of time. Yeah, I know that there would be some vegans who would argue it's unethical in every situation, that we should not put more of a value on our lives as opposed to animals. But I think that's kind of an ethical gray area there. I know for self-defense, there's no moral ambiguity there. There's no ethical question. Self-defense, if someone's attacking me, whether it's a human or it's a tiger or something like that, obviously I value my life more, and self-defense is always morally justified. There is, I think, a gray area where is it okay to kill and eat an animal to prolong your own life? And I guess you can put in there, well, would it be okay to kill and eat a human to preserve your own life? And I don't know anybody who would turn around and say, well, yeah, that would be fine. I don't think so. So would it be morally justified to kill and eat an animal to preserve your own life? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I would imagine at yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't think there's any gray area, though, as far as is it wrong to kill in order to, especially if you live in the United States, is it necessary to kill and eat animals? No, it's absolutely not necessary, and your life is in no danger, and so there's no gray area there. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I don't know what happened to Chris, that there's nothing indicating here that there's any volume. He's not been dropped from the call, and I'm happy to continue an ethical or moral discussion, always, because that's what this show comes down to, is being more morally and ethically consistent. So the idea, that's why I say it's so dishonest and criminal to turn around and say, I can make claims, but I don't need any evidence to prove them. And to think that kind of, everybody else does. I have to, if I make a claim, my claims have to be justified. I can't get away with it by just saying, well, it doesn't require any evidence. It's law. See, the law of Marc or the law of nature says I have every moral justification to put someone down who's trying to rule me. Natural law, that excuses me from all man-made law, natural law. And I don't need any evidence to prove that that's true. I mean, your laws don't apply to me because natural law says it doesn't. Where's your evidence, Marc? Don't need it. It's law. Don't need it. Of course they're not going to buy that from me. But because these apologists seem to have a vested interest in the prison system, have some kind of vested interest in whether it's college football or whatever the hell it happens to be, whether they had parents that died in war or parents that went and were heroes in war, whatever the hell it happens to be, they have to accept that double standard, and it's immoral, it's wrong, it's dishonest. If you make a claim that something is true that's affecting somebody's life, you have to have proof. What is that saying? What is that saying that, yes, it's, why is it, vox et praeterea nihil. It's voice and nothing more. It's not true just because you say so. And you can call yourself rational. You can call yourself Socrates. You can call yourself a skeptic. Just because somebody says something is true doesn't mean it is true. You still need evidence, or it's BS. So, and just to wrap up here, ICBM catcher, maybe he'll call on Saturday, but this show is, again, more proof that I opened the lines, was going to give preference to, and always give preference, especially if I know that they're dissenting, they get preference to come on the show. He or she had an opportunity We'll excuse that. We'll see how many shows will go by that he does not call in. And I want to say this. I have to say this. I forgot to mention this. When you call 218-632-9399, that's the call-in number for this broadcast and also the live broadcast on LRN.FM. It's the same damn number. There is a now what ICBM Catcher said is he's tried to call the show before but didn't know the code. When you call this, it's freeconferencepro.com. You can verify this independently, or you can just call 218-632-9399. There's a recorded message. You know, I could actually call it here on the show. I could just call it so everybody can hear what I'm talking about. But there's a recorded message when you do call that number, and it tells you the code. You just punch in 2020. 2020. In fact, you know what? Just for the critics, I'm going to call the damn number.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencepro.com. Please enter your passcode followed by the pound sign.
Oh, I'd have to do the whole thing to do that.
That is not a valid passcode.
Here we go.
That is not a valid passcode.
Oh,
Please re-enter your passcode now followed by the pound sign. Please enter your passcode followed by the pound sign.
I'm not going to do that on the show live. It wasn't, we do have that issue sometimes. But the passcode is 2020. It's on my website. Calvin put it there. 2020. And you get right into the queue to be able to trash me on the air in real time. So maybe we'll see ICBM Catcher on the show on Saturday. We will be live. I look forward to it. I'm actually quite disappointed that he did not call the show today, but I apologize if that came through on to any of the other callers. I did appreciate all the calls, and whoever we were not able to get to this week, we will get to next week. So remember, 4 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on on LRN.FM and also here on the Wednesday broadcast. This was for February 8th, 2011, episode 11. Here from live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona. And till next time, salud.